My pleasure. Okay, excited to kind of wrap up the journey through the wilderness here of the Israelites today. And then moving out of that next time, we'll be getting them into the promised land. So that's always nice to get to the promised land. Let's see, let me share this screen. So just to kind of bring us back up to speed, just where we're at, what our timeline was, Israel was delivered out of Egypt. First obstacle they encountered was the Red Sea. God parted the waters. They passed through as a representation of water baptism. Then they came to the place they called Mara, which means bitter, because the waters there could not be drunk until God showed Moses a tree that he added. And it's a really, really interesting symbolism of the cross being a tree and the waters of the Spirit that are necessary for spiritual life not being available until Jesus went to the tree or went to the cross. And then they started complaining about running out of food. And so God provided manna, and we've looked at how that manna teaches us how we need to daily walk with God and get into the Word of God on a daily basis, and have daily devotions and those sorts of things. But then he also gave these quail in response to the request of the Israelites just to have variety to their food. But at the same time, when that took place, God demonstrated that they need to also be more content and thankful. So it's interesting how the Lord does things. He's got sort of this balance that goes on where he wants us to be content, but he does also want us to come to him with our requests. And we've talked about how that pursuing the Lord with passion over things going on in your life is not a bad thing. And that we see that exemplified by David throughout the book of Psalms. And oftentimes, if you're going through something frustrating or discouraging or difficult, sometimes there's a purpose to that. At least part of it may well be that the Lord has provided that to provoke you to come to him with prayer. But I think the thing is that we just want to be at least a little bit careful about the attitude that we're coming with, and that we're always acknowledging God as, first of all, supreme. He can do whatever he wants, and he's not subject to our judgment, but then also putting confidence that he has our best interests at heart and that he has an answer and a plan that's better than any answer and plan we could have for ourselves. The next significant event, as they continued to travel along down the way, they came to the very mountain where Moses had received his calling to be the deliverer. And here at this area, God gave the law, and we've looked in a lot of detail, a fair amount of detail, at the types of laws that were given and the tabernacle and the plan for the tabernacle. So at this point, this group of people, which went into Egypt as a large family, has become a multi-million member nation. And with the giving of the law and the priesthood and the tabernacle, they now had established what their society was based on. And they've become now a very unique nation with its own customs and practices that set them apart from the rest of the nations on earth. Now, what they didn't have was a land. So a nation, we don't think of a nation as being nomadic and just where might they be on any given day. We think of them being at a specific location. Well, of course, the Lord promised a land for the nation of Israel, dating all the way back. Where do you think this promise first originated? It goes all the way back to Abraham. When the Lord called Abraham to depart from his family and to follow the Lord wholeheartedly and exclusively, he told him, I'm going to have you travel. I'm going to lead you. And wherever you set your foot, I'm going to give that land to you and to your descendants. And you're going to be the father of nations, and your descendants will occupy the land that you walk on. So his children then went on to become the 12 tribes of Israel, slaves in Egypt, and now have become the nation of Israel. And they are finally now fulfilling that plan centuries after that promise was given to Abraham. They're on their way to the promised land. So they come to a location called Kadesh Barnea, and they say, all right, we're out of Egypt. We're coming into the promised land. Let's go in and occupy and set up and become a nation. But let's see what's going on over there. And so the Lord told Moses, send thou men that they may search the land of Canaan, which I give unto the children of Israel. Of every tribe of their fathers shall ye send a man, every one a ruler among them. In other words, you've got 12 tribes, Moses. From each tribe, pick one guy. Needs to be a prominent person, someone that is respected among that tribe, someone who is a leader from that tribe. Pull out one of each, so you're going to have 12, and send them in to spy out the land and bring back a plan. And then it goes on to list the 12 spies. Of those 12, there are 10 names that if I named them, they would not be familiar to you at all. We have all completely forgotten them, and that's a good thing. And we'll find out why in a couple of minutes if you don't already know. But there are 2 names that you would recognize. One was Caleb, who was from the tribe of Judah, and one was Joshua, who was from the tribe of Ephraim. Now, if you remember, Ephraim is a tribe that was sort of a grandchild of Jacob, rather than child, because it came through Joseph. Ephraim was the son of Joseph, Ephraim and Manasseh, and that's replacing the tribe of Levi, which is set apart to ministry. So with these 12 spies, there's not a spy from Levi, because that's not what that tribe is used for. But there's one from Ephraim and from Manasseh. So anyway, Joshua is from the tribe of Ephraim, and Caleb is from the tribe of Judah. And then there are 10 others from the other 10 tribes. Verse 17 says, and Moses sent them to spy out the land of Canaan, and said unto them, get you up this way southward, and go up into the mountain, and see the land, what it is, and the people that dwell therein, whether they be strong or weak, few or many. Now, they're just trying to figure out what to anticipate, what to expect. The point was not go and see if we can do this, because the Lord has promised it. And if the Lord promised it, there's no question of whether it can happen or not. It's just a matter of, okay, what are the specific steps that we're going to take, and then see the Lord fulfill his promise. And I think back on Noah and the ark, and what struck me studying that years ago, I've mentioned it before, is that the command that God gave to Noah was to get 2 of every kind of animal, 7 of the clean ones, and bring them all into the ark. And if I start to really think about that, all these different kinds of animals, that seems to me to be an absolutely impossible task. I don't see how you can actually accomplish that. Really imagine the reality of trying to get 2 of every kind of animal. And first of all, do you even know what every kind of animal is? I don't really feel like that's possible. And if I was going to view things in a certain way, I might react negatively to God and say, hey, how can you ask me to do that? That I can't do that. That's not doable. But living by faith, we look at God directing us to do something impossible, and we realize it's not impossible with God. And if he promised it, it can and will happen. And if he commanded it, it can and needs to be done. And we can rely on God to make up the difference. So if you face an impossible task that's in the will of God, it's actually no reason for it to be discouraging. It should be encouraging and exciting, because you know, oh, this must be something where I'm going to actually see the hand of God at work and see something miraculous take place. So back to the story that we're looking at, the context is just go and take a look and tell us what to expect when we go in to fulfill and receive the promise of the Lord. But the attitude of these spies was not totally one of faith. And so here we join the spies in verse 23. It says, they came unto the brook of Eshcol and cut down from thence a branch with one cluster of grapes, and they bare it between two upon a staff, and they brought of the pomegranates and of the figs. Now, when I was a kid, I heard about this story, and somehow or another, I got the impression that the grapes themselves were monstrous grapes, like the size of a watermelon or something. But that's not necessarily what this is referring to. It is saying that one cluster of grapes really wasn't practical for one person to carry. And that's a pretty big cluster of grapes. But it doesn't mean that the grapes are outlandishly big individually. It just means the cluster itself is so big and full of grapes. So they had to put a staff through it and lift it up, and two people carried that one staff on their shoulders to carry a cluster of grapes. So this is the kind of land that God has prepared for his people, just rich with the things that they could want. So verse 25, and they returned from searching of the land after 40 days. And verse 26, and they went and came to Moses and to Aaron and to all the congregation of the children of Israel unto the wilderness of Paran to Kadesh, and brought back word unto them and unto all the congregation, and showed them the fruit of the land. In verse 27, and they told him and said, we came unto the land whither thou sentest us, and surely it floweth with milk and honey, and this is the fruit of it. Nevertheless, the people be strong that dwell in the land, and the cities are walled and very great. And moreover, we saw the children of Anak there. And the significance of the children of Anak is that that family was really, really large people. They referred to them as giants. They were much taller than average. You know, human beings come in a wide variety of sizes. There's I like basketball a lot. There's an NBA player named Anthony Davis who is really, really tall. If I remember correctly, I think he's 6'11" or 7 feet. Ridiculously tall. If you've ever been around anyone who's 6'5", that you really look up to them, right? But we're talking about a guy who's 6'11", 7 feet, 6 inches taller than that. Well, one of my favorite YouTube clips, there's another player named Boban Marjanovic, who literally, I started to say something and it sounds in my mind like it's going to come out sounding insulting. That's not the point at all. But you could almost see Boban Marjanovic resembling a fairy tale giant. And he's 7 feet 4 inches, if I remember correctly. And there's a clip where Boban came up with the basketball, and basketball players, when a play is blown dead, they like to knock the ball out of each other's hands or be the one who comes away holding the ball. It's just a little power move they try to do to each other. And so Boban had the ball, and so Anthony Davis tried to grab it, and Boban just picked it up and just held it up over his head. And Anthony Davis is like jumping and swatting to try to get to the basketball. It's a really, really funny clip if you look it up, because he looks like a little kid. You know, if you've probably, you know, we've all seen a little kid trying to get something from a grown person or an older person, and just hold it up high and he's jumping, trying to get it. The only thing is Anthony Davis is looking like a little kid, but Anthony Davis is 6'11", and yet he's looking like a little kid trying to get that ball because of how big Boban Marjanovic is. So I'm just referring to the fact that human beings come in all shapes and sizes, and a huge variety of shapes and sizes. And some people are really, really large. And to use an adjective or even a substitute noun like the word giant to refer to people that are really big makes logical sense. And the Bible does call these really large people giants. Now, the reason I'm talking about this right now is because sometimes we read Bible language and there's a certain context that has formed in our own minds based on things that we've become familiar with in our lifetime. And with the way fairy tales have evolved and the role that fairy tales have played in our personal experiences, we hear about a giant and we think about Jack and the Beanstalk. And, we think about something that's not real. But really, a giant in Bible language is a person who's really, really big, including like the giant Goliath. Now, Goliath was taller than any human that we have on record. But that's not a real big deal because we didn't start keeping these records until very recently, if we think in context of all the thousands of years of human history, right? And there are people that are really, really large. And in different time frames, in different decades and centuries, average heights and extreme heights that exist vary. So to discover in the Bible that you have a group of people who are exceptionally large doesn't mean that there's something supernatural going on or something odd or fairy tale like going on. It just means this is some people who were really, really big people. And the children of Anak, I don't know exactly, but it might be that they were typically in the neighborhood of 7 feet tall or something like that. So just imagine if you're part of a nation where the average is 5'10", and then there's a group of people and these people are all in the neighborhood of 7 feet tall, you're like, there's a bunch of giants. We don't stand a chance against these people. That's the reaction that these spies had. And so they're looking and they're coming back and they're saying, yeah, there's a lot of good stuff over there. But verse 28, nevertheless, that's some strong people that are already there. Their cities are walled up. They're big cities. They're strong. And there are even some people over there that are giants. We saw even the children of Anak there. There's some really big and strong people and some really strong cities in there. So the point is that these spies are focused on the obstacle and how difficult it would be for them under their own power to overcome these obstacles, where they could be looking at the good things that are there and focused on the fact that God promised. And so just saying, wow, look at the fruit of this land. It flows with milk and honey. That's the land we're going to have. And yeah, there's some obstacles, but I guess God's going to get us through it somehow. But they were just focused on the obstacles and looking at it from a perspective of their own ability to deal with those obstacles, with the exception of Caleb in verse 30. And Caleb stilled the people before Moses and said, let us go up at once and possess it, for we are well able to overcome it. But the men that went up with him said, we be not able to go up against the people, for they are stronger than we. And there we saw the giants, the sons of Anak, which come of the giants, and we were in our own sight as grasshoppers, and so we were in their sight. What a fascinating statement, right? And this is such a powerful lesson right here. We were in our own sight as grasshoppers, and so we were in their sight. Yeah, you don't have a chance against them because you don't look at yourself the right way. Look at yourself as the people of God and as the receivers of the promise of God, and then they will look at you differently. But we were in our own sight as grasshoppers, and so we were in their sight. Now, I want to mention, because we're not reading every single verse out of the chapters covering this story. This verse specifies Caleb. The next chapter in part of what we are going to skip over reading lets us know that Caleb was not the only voice, but Joshua was also in unity with Caleb, saying, yeah, no, we've got to do this and we can do it. But the other 10 of the spies were all against it. And the people reacted so strongly to all of this and were so impacted by the negative that came from these 10 spies that when Caleb and Joshua tried to say again, that doesn't matter, we can do this, they were actually going to stone Caleb and Joshua to death. They just didn't even want to hear it. And imagine that. They didn't want to hear the positive. They didn't want to hear the encouragement that you can do this. They wanted to just accept that we can't do this and we're just going to just stay where we are. This is mind-boggling because they hated where they were. They're traveling through the wilderness, the desert, dealing with lack of food and water and variety of food. They don't like having the manna all the time. There are all these things they don't like, but they are more apt to accept that state than to be provoked to do the steps necessary to get out of it. Now, when we look back at these sorts of things with the people of Israel, and we really see these types of attitudes and choices, a lot of times it's really easy to just say, wow, those people were so stupid. But the lesson is for us. And the fact is, we have the same human nature that they had. And any attitude that we see, positive or negative, in Bible characters and groups of people in the Bible, we need to realize that we have the ability to be exactly the same way. And we probably have been at one time or another. So take this pattern that we see illustrated here and look for how to get the positive into your life for this type of situation. They're living under a circumstance that for a period of time they can't do anything about, and it's actually God who put them in that difficult place. But God puts us in difficult places so we'll push to get out sometimes. And that's what was going on here. He didn't want them to be perfectly comfortable in the wilderness because it's not his plan that they stay in the wilderness. So they're coming and complaining about, we don't want manna all the time. And God's saying, okay, that's fine, but I've got a time for you where you're going to have the opportunity to be in a land flowing with milk and honey. You won't have to have manna all the time. But if I give you a little more of what you just want right now for your comfort, then you'll never push out of it into the promises that I have for you and into the destiny that I have for you. But what's amazing is that in this case, they didn't have all the comforts and they still didn't have the will to push out of it, didn't have the faith to rely on the promise of God and to act on the promise of God and the direction of God. We can be that way, you guys. We've got to be careful not to be that way. Are you in situations in your life that you don't like and that you don't think are your potential, that you should be out of this, or you have situations like that right now, God has something for you. And when the day comes that God opens the door and directs you in a direction, don't settle. Move on that. Have faith in God. Move out of the preparation stage and into the promise stage. Have the faith to act on the direction of God. But there is this human tendency to just want to just settle. And in whatever situation that we're in, to find just enough comfort to kind of just survive in it and just stay there. And that is a terrible thing to allow to control you. It is not the will of God. God's will is that we grow and that we ascend and that we leave things behind rather than just settle into a lukewarm semblance of a comfort to just ride out the rest of our days. Okay, so they were literally going to stone Caleb and Joshua to silence the voice that wanted to provoke them to break out of their and overcome their fear. They would rather kill that voice than overcome their fear. And they also renewed all their complaints about the whole thing. They went to Moses and Aaron and said, you should have just left us in Egypt. Why did we ever come out of Egypt? And just all of these complaints. And the Lord is hearing all these complaints. And the thing is, he's the one who's made all this plan to bless them. And so this is insulting to the Lord. And here we go in Numbers chapter 14, verse 11. And the Lord said unto Moses, how long will this people provoke me? And how long will it be before they believe me for all the signs which I have showed among them? I want to share a personal testimony with you guys for a minute. And it comes to my mind because the Lord is talking about the fact that I have shown signs. Now, I know I didn't do everything you wanted me to do, but I've done things that only I could do. And you should take that to know, hey, the hand of God is on this. And he has done miracles. He brought us through the Red Sea. He destroyed the armies of Egypt. He didn't give me a lazy boy and a remote control to a big screen on the other side, but I know he's taking care of me. You should look at the fact that I gave you manna from heaven and realize God can give me anything. He gave me that. That means he can give me anything. So I wish he'd give me something else he's not giving me, but I'm going to put my confidence in him. I've shown you enough signs to earn your confidence. Even if I don't do everything you want me to do, put confidence in me because of what you have seen me do. And so I'm going to share a testimony with you that I don't think I've shared with you, but I may have. My son is a grown man at this point, young man. But when he was a baby, he had we had a trip to Pennsylvania planned. And he was kind of like seeming like he not in great shape. He was, maybe getting a little bit sick. And so we took him to see the doctor, and he looked at him and said, yeah, it looks like he's developing an ear infection. And we said, well, we're supposed to be flying to Pennsylvania today. And he said, well, I'll give you this prescription. And, you should be able to go ahead and go up there and get the prescription filled. And everything should be fine. Well, so that's what we did. But in the process of traveling with the air travel, apparently this ear infection either was worse than the doctor recognized at first, or it was just progressing way faster than the doctor anticipated. But in any case, his discomfort got really, really bad. And by the time we got to where we were going in Pennsylvania, it was a very distressing situation. So his mom got the phone, and this is 23, 22 years ago or whatever. So this is a landline phone, and we're in a little bitty village in Pennsylvania called Dutch Hill, and the nearest decent sized town is a city called Clarion. It's about a 30-minute drive, and they have a Walmart there. And so she's going to make sure that they have access to the prescription so that we can go over and get the medicine from the Walmart in Clarion, Pennsylvania. So she picks up the phone and dials 411. How many numbers is that? How many buttons? 3. She pushed 3 buttons, 411. Those of us who remember using 411, we know that when they answer, they want to know what city, right? You can get any phone number from anywhere in the country. Here's why I'm going with this. The operator did not answer and say what city. The person who answered the phone said, Walmart pharmacy, can I help you? And she was just stunned for a second. She's like, well, wait a minute. Not just Walmart, mind you, Walmart pharmacy. And she said, wait, what Walmart? And the lady said, Clarion, Pennsylvania. And so she, again, was just staggered for a second, and then she got right to business. Okay, I need this prescription filled, and gave the information or whatever, and we drove over there and got it. That's a miracle, you guys. There is no possible way that she called the Walmart pharmacy in Clarion, Pennsylvania. We had no idea what the number was, and she only hit 3 numbers on the phone. So that's a miracle. Now, what we wanted God to do was to heal my son. We wanted the crying to stop. We wanted him to smile and laugh again and enjoy the evening and us relax and have fun on this little vacation we were on. That's what we wanted to happen. But that didn't happen. But God did show that he was miraculously involved, and we took that to heart. And we just, in our minds and in our hearts and our spirits, we said, well, God is in control, and this is not fun, but we can have confidence that God is taking care of this in God's way, not our way. And of course, we got the medicine, went on from there. Now, the ongoing farther part of the story is that my son lost a significant amount of his hearing when that took place. And we didn't really know that for another year. But it turned out, and turns out to this day, that my son's left ear is nearly completely deaf. And it's to the point of really, it doesn't, the tiny bit of hearing that's there is not really a benefit. And in his right ear, he has about 50% hearing. So he wears hearing aids most of the time. And over the years, as he was a child and then growing up, and to this day, we've prayed for God to miraculously heal him. And we've seen people miraculously healed. We know unquestionably God can do that, but it has been God's choice not to do it. Meanwhile, God showed us, I did work a miracle in this situation. And so I'm doing this the way I want to do it to accomplish my purposes. And my son has dealt with this obstacle his entire life, and he's done an incredible job of dealing with it. And it has put him in a position to develop certain aspects of his character that maybe he would not have developed with not having to deal with that obstacle. It's also put him in a position to connect with certain people in certain situations that he would not be able to do except for these conditions that are in his life. And I don't think I have a full understanding of all of God's reasons for doing what he's doing with this aspect of my son's life, but I have utter confidence that God is doing what he wants to do. And I continue to pray for healing. And it won't shock me if one day he's suddenly miraculously healed, but it won't depress me if he's not either, because I know God is doing his will. and has better things in mind than what I could design for myself or for my children. So back to the children of Israel here. God said, I have shown them signs. How long will it be before they start to believe me and start to put confidence in let me do for them the way I want to do for them and go along with what I'm trying to do so that they can enter into the fulfillment of the blessings that I have for them. So verse 21, but as truly as I live, all the earth shall be filled with the glory of the Lord, because all those men which have seen my glory and my miracles, which I did in Egypt and in the wilderness, and have tempted me now these 10 times, and have not hearkened to my voice, surely they shall not see the land which I swear unto their fathers, neither shall any of them that provoked me see it. But my servant Caleb, because he had another spirit within him, and hath followed me fully, him will I bring into the land whereinto he went, and his seed shall possess it. Say unto them, as truly as I live, saith the Lord, as ye have spoken in mine ears, so will I do to you. And that's talking about when they came complaining, they said, wish we would just die in the wilderness. He said, okay, that's what's going to happen. Your carcasses shall fall in this wilderness, and all that were numbered of you according to your whole number, from 20 years old and upward, which have murmured against me. Doubtless ye shall not come into the land, concerning which I swear to make you dwell therein, save Caleb the son of Jephunneh and Joshua the son of Nun. But your little ones, which you said should be a prey, that's what they said when they were complaining to Moses. You brought us out here, our little ones will be a prey. And instead of saying, oh, God brought us out here, he's going to take care of us. He said, your little ones, which you said should be a prey, them will I bring in, and they shall know the land which ye have despised. But as for you, your carcasses, they shall fall in this wilderness, and your children shall wander in the wilderness 40 years, and bear your whoredoms until your carcasses be wasted in the wilderness. After the number of the days in which ye searched the land, even 40 days, each day for a year, shall ye bear your iniquities, even 40 years, and ye shall know my breach of promise. So you, all of us have heard that Israel wandered in the wilderness for 40 years. This is the reason it was specifically 40 years, because when they had the early opportunity after a relatively short journey, just enough time to get the law given and established and everything in place to be this nation, God's ready to give them the land after a fairly short journey. They did 40 days of spying, and then they rejected the promise of God by not placing faith. And God said, okay, as an echo to those 40 days, going to be another 40 years, and you're just going to wander in this wilderness. And by the end of the 40 years, all of you who are older than 20 years old right now will be dead, except for Caleb and Joshua. But your children will be grown, and they will go in, and I will fulfill my promise to Abraham that his descendants will be a nation and will occupy that promised land. So that's a tragic story, but it's a part of the history that can really give us a leg up to not let parallel things happen in our own lives, but focus on God's ability to fulfill his promises in your life. Now, the wandering then proceeded. The years and years of just living in the wilderness and that becoming the norm. In the process, they dealt with various nations that their wanderings took them near and whatever. And of course, this whole time, the wanderings are being led and directed by the pillar of fire by night and the pillar of cloud by day. That continued during the entire journey. So each time they moved from any one place to any other place, it was in pursuit of the pillar of cloud and the pillar of fire, following those things, God literally directing them exactly where to go. This went on for 40 years. The children grew up. And then as we're getting closer and closer to the end of this time, there was an incident that occurred because they're still carrying on with the complaining. You know, even the next generation that came up still had a little bit of a problem with this, and faith was still a challenge. So we come to an event with known as the Brazen Serpent. And so let's take a look at what happened here. Numbers chapter 21 says, and they journeyed from Mount Hor by the way of the Red Sea to compass the land of Edom, and the soul of the people was much discouraged because of the way. And the people spake against God and against Moses. Now, it's one thing to be discouraged. That's understandable. This is a tough journey, but that doesn't mean that you have to speak against God and against the leaders that God has given you. You can still say good things, even though you're discouraged. You can turn that discouragement into prayer and not into complaining necessarily. Anyway, verse 5, they spake against God and against Moses. Wherefore have ye brought us up out of Egypt to die in the wilderness? For there is no bread, neither is there any water, and our soul loatheth this light bread. That's obviously the manna. And the Lord sent fiery serpents among the people, and they bit the people. And much people of Israel died. So I don't know, maybe like scorpions. I'm not sure exactly. But there's this onslaught here, and a bunch of people are dying because of these poisonous fiery serpents. Therefore, the people came to Moses and said, we have sinned, for we have spoken against the Lord and against thee. Pray unto the Lord that he take away the serpents from us. And Moses prayed for the people. And the Lord said unto Moses, make thee a fiery serpent and set it upon a pole. And it shall come to pass that everyone that is bitten, when he looketh upon it, shall live. And Moses made a serpent of brass and put it upon a pole. And it came to pass that if a serpent had bitten any man, when he beheld the serpent of brass, he lived. Is that weird or what? To me, that is so odd. And it doesn't even seem like, you know, the ways of God. It seems like pagan ways or something. But this is what he said to do. And so Moses did just what he said to do. It doesn't resemble anything else God has ever directed them to do, but this is what he said to do. So that's what they did. Now, I did not say to worship the thing. He just said, look at it. And so it's like, well, what is going on here? What we have here is another example of God and his how much he likes to use symbolism and to provide symbolism, because this ends up becoming a really fascinating symbolic representation of Jesus Christ. Because we have 2 Corinthians chapter 5 says that, for he hath made him to be sin for us, who knew no sin, that we might be made the righteousness of God in him. Jesus was literally made to be sin. So when Jesus was crucified on the cross, sin was crucified on the cross. Now, if he had had sins of his own, this would not be possible, because he would be crucified. That's him being crucified for his sin. But because he's sinless, he's able to take on him the sins of the entire world and substitute for all of our sins and literally become our sins, so that the sins can be crucified without us being crucified. So that's similar to this brazen serpent kind of a thing. So you guys are being bit by serpents. The thing that's killing you is these serpents. So hang a serpent up on a tree and look up at it, and look at the very thing that is your problem, and that will remove the problem. And here's what Jesus said in John chapter 12, and if I be lifted up from the earth, will draw all men unto me. This he said, signifying what death he should die. Lifted up from the earth, like that brazen serpent was lifted up on a pole. And Hebrews 12 says, let us lay aside every weight and the sin which doth so easily beset us, and let us run with patience the race that is set before us, looking unto Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith. Just really neat parallelisms here, right? And the people living at the time, they had no idea what this would be representing and what would ultimately be fulfilled here. But just a neat and unique situation. Now, this turned into a bit of a problem going forward, not because of what this was, but because of what people did with it. After this was over, this was only for this particular circumstance. But after it was over, some people among the nation of Israel began to actually worship the brazen serpent, which was a gift and a blessing for a time, but it was not to be lifted up and as a symbol to worship. God gives things and he does things to take care of specific times and situations, but then we move on, and we shouldn't necessarily expect him to do exactly the same way the next time around. He's got something fresh and something new coming for us. Okay, so those are the stories that we're looking at for the journey, and next week we'll take them into the promised land.
Christian, this was really a timely lesson today. Thank you.
Absolutely. Glad to hear that.
I sure don't want to complain about anything today, that's for sure.
That's right. No complaint.
We are blessed.
Amen.
Yes, we are.
Anyone else got a comment or anything you want to share? Christian, awesome job.
Always good, Christian. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Yeah, you do a wonderful job, Christian. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Always hits home. Christian, you did a great job.
Thanks, Louise.
I always enjoy the parallel drawn from, I'm sorry.
Huh?
Go
No,
ahead.
Awesome job. Enjoyed it.
Always hits home, is all I've got to say. It's just right on timing.
Awesome.
I always enjoy the parallels between that time in the desert headed to the promised land and where we're at today.
Yep.
And the lessons that are just as pertinent now as they were then. And God's promises are just as good now as they were then.
Or better.
Yeah, they're better. Yeah, exactly. So thank you very much.
Awesome. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Randy, for hosting this.
Yeah.
We enjoy getting on here with you guys. I can tell you, every week I think about so many that, we try to reach out, touch base with. Seems like it doesn't work for everybody on this particular time frame, but it's still a chance to get more folks to appreciation the word of God. I'm telling you, nothing like it. Nothing better than teaching the word.
Very true.
Well, thank you, Christian. I don't know how you want to wrap up. If you want to wrap up, anybody have any prayer requests that? I'm liking this.